It seems like it's been 40 weeks since you got 40 winks. Your back pain? Unbearable. Tossing, turning, trying to find that pain-free position. And that's the moment you realize you can't spend another waking moment putting off treatment.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for spine care, with a ton of surgical and non-surgical treatments for back pain. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better, the Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 720, Nourishing Your Body, Mind, and Soul with Healthy Habits coach Lindsey Bonadonna.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I'm Amanda Valentine, and my guest, who I've already been chatting with for 2 hours.
Yes.
Before we even started this podcast, is Lindsey Bonadonna. How are you?
I am doing great, and I feel like we should have been recording our entire conversation because it's been so amazing.
I know we've covered, all sorts of stuff. So it just means you'll have to come back for these other conversations.
Yes. Yes. I would love that.
But we met at an event, I guess maybe a month ago now or several weeks ago now. We were on, I guess what we would call a women's empowerment sort of panel. Mm-hmm. And you have such an amazing story, and we have so much in common, and especially with our own coaching and how our relationship is with food and movement and mindset. So I'm super hyped to have this conversation outside of the 2-hour one we just had before we started. But tell me about you, your backstory. Are you from Cincinnati? How did you get from where you started up to the point where you're being on a women's empowerment panel?
Yes. So it's so interesting because I simultaneously cannot believe that at where I'm at, but then also reflecting back, I'm like, this is where I've meant to be my entire life. So I am originally from Buffalo, New York, and
I lived in Rochester for 4 years.
No kidding.
Yeah. And I lived in Elmira, New York.
I know where that is. Yes. So I've been through kind of like a series of very random events and the universe putting me exactly where I need to be. I moved to Findlay, Ohio around the age of 25, and that's where I got introduced into the beer business. And I took a job with Goose Island Brewery, which is what brought me down to Cincinnati. And I've been in Cincinnati now for like 13 years, which is insane. And I always thought it was going to be a stopping ground, but I have totally fallen in love with the city and have made my home here. So I worked in beer for about 15 years altogether. Well, 13 years altogether.
What does that mean, working in beer?
Oh, yeah. So I worked on the wholesaler side. So I did sales.
Okay.
I also worked on the brewery side and was a brewery rep for when I was with Goose Island for Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and Michigan. So I taught people a lot about beer.
Nice.
And living and all that kind of good stuff. And my last gig in beer was actually my ex-husband owns a brewery in Cincinnati, so we worked together on that. And then, I left. In 2017, I was what I felt was randomly diagnosed with a rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's syndrome, and Hashimoto's. I was just not feeling well, and I thought it was because I was pregnant. And then after I had my daughter, I was like, oh, it's probably because now I'm not pregnant and hormones and all of that. But I found myself always like stretching my hands, my wrists, my toes, my feet, like all of that. And then it started getting to a point where I was like, this is weird. So, consulted Dr. Google.
Yeah.
And then rheumatoid arthritis started popping up and I was like, oh man. And actually I went to go see a doctor at Christ Hospital, a rheumatologist, and get some blood work done. And I found out that I had these things. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Like, cool. Great.
Yeah.
Just
so
what
it's
I wanted to hear.
Yeah. It's that feeling of like, okay, I have an answer. I feel like I can do something with that. But then also like, oh, this feels like big deal shit right here.
Yeah.
So it's always been my approach with health that I love to try to heal my body as much as humanly possible. I'm very curious. I know a lot of different things. So I like to try to heal myself before I get started on some heavy duty medicine. So I set out to do that in 2018, which turned out to be a complete S show of a year. Can I swear?
Yeah, go for it.
2018 was a total shit show of a year. And well, I went into it with the best intentions of like, oh, I'm going to heal my body and this will be great and I'll eat. The company that I was working for was also went through a very large expansion, an incredible amount of financial distress. Like there was just a lot going on. And my ex had to go back into production. I was kind of running things, and my ego definitely was a big part of that. Like when he asked, he was like, oh, well, he's like, do you want to, I need to do this. Can you do this? And I was just like, like be like the CEO.
Yeah.
And then, inside I was like, oh, I'm going to show everyone how I can like fix this and turn the ship around and it will be great and I'll be celebrated and I will have proved myself to all. And really nobody cared. But anyways, my ego was very involved. I even bought like bright red lipstick. So as I set out on this adventure, I stopped taking care of myself. I was eating French fries out of the restaurant. That was like my main food group, which I love French fries. But the challenge is not that I was eating French fries. The challenge is I was not eating like enough of anything that was really nourishing to my body. Like I was constantly eating on the go.
Yeah.
I wasn't drinking enough water. Kids, running all of them around. I wasn't sleeping. I was incredibly stressed out. I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders at all times. There were many employees that I was worried about their jobs and making sure that they were getting paid. I mean, it was just really tremendous. And then, so fast forward, going through that, and as life happens, if we ignore the signs that our body gives us, because we're running so fast, eventually our body and God, the universe, will say, you have not been paying attention. So now I am going to force you to rest and slow down. And it always happens at the most inconvenient time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel me on that.
I
right?
do. I got a concussion earlier this year, and that was the forced rest where I'm like, oh,
yes.
no.
It's like, no. So I found myself in the emergency room twice in 1 week.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. With a crazy, crazy migraine headache situation that not even like the fancy migraine cocktail that they give you, it didn't work.
Dang.
Yes, it was crazy. And my partner at the time said to me, and this was like, whoop, when we talk about that aha moment, I was in bed and he was just like, I think that you might need to consider going on some medicine, because he's like, I don't want to be walking you down our kid's graduation in a wheelchair.
Oh.
And I was just like, I don't want that either.
Yeah.
And so I set out to find a functional medicine practitioner that could help me look at the whole body and how to heal things. I started figuring out with these migraines that were happening, that they were happening with my cycle. I didn't realize this, but I also was working with a health coach. I didn't know that that's what she was. And I also, a dear friend of mine was working for Arbonne at the time and was like, I think I have something that can help you. And I was like, okay. So I did an elimination diet and the 30-day thing, which I then did for another 30 days. And my body started feeling so wonderful.
Nice.
And through this whole process, looking at hormones, looking at big picture, I started realizing that I had a really deep passion for helping people on their own journey. And like looking back, like I've always been the person, like I just want to look people dead in the eyes and be like, you got this. You're totally worth it. I know it's really hard, but I promise you, like it will be so worth it. Like keep going. You got this. And that just really took hold for me. And I never really had, in my life, in my different experiences, I never really had the right outlet for it. And then I started realizing, I was like, there's something with this like health stuff. And so I was doing some stuff with Arbonne, which I never thought in a million years I would do network marketing, but I met the most incredible people. And I had this awakening of like, uh-oh. I think that what I've been told has been like my biggest detriment, that I am, you know, an eternal optimist, all of these things, that life doesn't work that way. It's not all rainbows and sunshine, like all of this stuff. Like I actually found out through some different situations. I'm like, oh shit, I think that's like actually my superpower. So that was like one flip that happened. And then another flip happened was that I wanted to work on some type of certification because I know a lot about nutrition and health, but I felt like there were gaps in knowledge that I knew I had and gaps I didn't yet discover. So I wanted to get some type of certification, and that's how I found the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. So all this is kind of like cooking in the background, right? This is, so we're going into like 2019 now. Mm-hmm. And then in July, I have this moment, and I shit you not, it was 2 a.m. in the morning, and I wake up like, sit bolt upright, and I'm like, I don't think that this is what life is supposed to feel like. I don't think this is what a relationship is supposed to feel like. I don't think that this is what things are supposed to feel like.
Yeah. And
from that moment, everything just started to unfold. And I made the decision, my now ex-husband, you know, we separated, and we're very blessed to be great co-parents to each other and can communicate well, which is super, super awesome. And we're both very happy. We found different relationships that work really well for both of us. So that happened. And then I started to realize, because I was like, oh yeah, I'll be like an Arbonne person that's also a health coach. And that's like pretty cool. And also around this time, I had the opportunity, I always kind of tickled around the idea of becoming a yoga teacher, but right at that same time, an opportunity to take my 300-hour yoga teacher certification came up. So I just did all of these things. And then I realized through working with this business strategist coach who's phenomenal, and she pulled my deepest wishes and soul out of like the pit of my body that I didn't even know existed. So I realized that I am a healthy habits coach and an optimist, encourager, and yoga teacher who is just super passionate about helping people live a more vibrant, wellness-filled life that feels really great and authentic to them, instead of, you know, what we've been kind of conditioned to do, which is just focus on, okay, well, what are you eating? What are you not eating?
Yeah.
What are you exercising? What are you not exercising? Getting in this in this cycle of guilt. And I flipping absolutely love it. And I think part of the reason why I deeply love it too is because I have this kind of radical side of me that likes to go against the grain with, you know, what we believe to be true and questioning what actually is true. And this allows me to tap into that in like a really powerful and productive way with people. Because I do believe that when we put ourselves first, like we have to put ourselves first. And I know there's the cliche, put on your oxygen mask before others. Like,
yeah.
That shit is so true, because when we put ourselves first, we are helping to advocate for like generational change. Like I was asked the question, I would love to ask you this question.
Okay. Oh man. Hopefully I have an answer.
So I was asked the question of like, what would have to happen in the world for you to be out of a job?
Oh God.
Like what would the world...
To be out of a job completely?
Yes.
I mean, I guess there's a couple different ways I would take that of like for survival. I mean, there would have to, I don't know, they would have to be like no jobs left, I guess. If I needed to survive and I have to pay bills and need to exist, I will find a job doing whatever. But I guess if to think of like, hey, do you want to live a life free of a job? If I were able to just survive and live off the land or something without a job, that would be pretty cool too. So I don't know if that's the angle you're going at.
So think about even bigger. So when I was asked this question, it was, I think I could be more specific, like, what would have to be happening in the world to have you being a health coach not being a needed job anymore in this world?
Oh, what would have to happen so nobody would need to talk about any of these things?
Nobody would need a health coach. Like,
oh man, well, a lot of things. I guess just toxic marketing and I think just proper education from a growth standpoint is if we're all properly educated and we have a knowledge of what foods are fueling our body. And again, it's not just marketing to make somebody money and we're using flashy words like lean or fat free. If we understand what healthy movement means and what that feels like, if all of those things just happen to be existed and we were all just taught that from an age, from the moment we could start understanding things, then yeah, there wouldn't be a need for somebody to help walk you through some of that process.
Yes. Mine is very similar. Like I was like, well, nobody would use the word self-care anymore because it was just something that we were all naturally practicing. Like it was just a part of like what we did. Mm-hmm. And as we work that back, when we choose to put ourselves first, as uncomfortable as that can be, we are advocating for the generational change that needs to happen in order to get to a world where the world doesn't need health coaches anymore. And that's why it is so powerful. And I went into it not wanting to be a mom health coach. I was like, moms, I don't want to. But as I started to look at, well, who can I speak loudest to that could have the most significant impact on this generational change that I'm looking to accomplish and put myself out of a job with? And I also started to take a look at my life experiences, which have been varied and interesting, right? And I am a mom. I was a doula. I love birthy things. I love like women in general. I just think that like we have amazing capabilities that often are just shadowed by, you know, by society and what we believe to be true. I was a women's studies major in college. As I looked at all of this and it all came together, I was like, I'm going to speak loudest to moms and I'm going to speak loudest to women because that is how we're going to, if I can encourage more and support more women to put themselves first, that's how we will make this change. And nice. I will work with, I do have male clients as well, but I work with whoever feels called, but I love sharing that message of like, figure out what works best for you and like, know that just by you being you and putting yourself first, like you are changing the world.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
We don't think about it that way. We're like, oh, it's selfish. Blah, you put yourself first. No, actually, you're changing the world.
Oh, it's
in a really
so hard.
Way.
It's so hard to put yourself first, though. Like I struggle with this a ton. It's like I think that you understand that concept, but then to actually put it into reality of like, hey, no, actually calm down and not answer all those emails. I'm so like, no, we're going to answer the email. I have to show up. I'm going to bend over backwards for this person, even though it's putting me through pain. Yeah, I'm not real great at that at all.
Yeah, me neither. Not all the time. It's an evolution, right?
Excuse me while I interrupt this amazing conversation with Lindsey to tell you about my girl Sarah and Team Fit With Me and Sarah's health coaching. Sarah has been my health coach for the past year and has been absolutely amazing. If you need an accountability buddy, Sarah is your lady. Plus, she has an entire team behind her, including meal plans reviewed by a registered dietitian. She's got personal trainers. She is a personal trainer. She'll teach you all about macros and having a good relationship with food and exercise. If you have any issues like PCOS, thyroid diseases, gut health conditions, hormonal dysfunction, she can work with you on that. Get some labs done. See what's really going on. That's how I found out I have Hashimoto's disease, and how to start taking care of that is all through my work with Sarah and Team Fit With Me. There is a lot going on. The Facebook group, there's recipe sharing, there's lots of support. It's absolutely amazing. So if you're looking for a great health coach, looking to get some good information about health, food, exercise, and have a partner in crime to help you through it, check out Team Fit With Me right now. Get 10% off month one of all packages, plans, and add-on services when you go to teamfitwithme.com/poundthis, which you'll find in the show notes. Now, let's get back to this conversation with Lindsey.
Kind of, it's an evolution, and it's a retraining and relearning about what works really best for us, and then turning it into, I call them like fun-sized habits, like teeny tiny little changes that we can bring into our life that help us practice self-care in a way that doesn't feel polarizing. And then also being gentle with ourselves too when we find ourselves getting pulled back into like the crazy hustle and bustle of life. of being gentle with ourselves, acknowledging that, and then just kind of coming right on back to, okay, well, what little thing can I do for myself today to just help bring some self-care and love into my life? And some days that might look like, my goodness, prioritizing going to the bathroom as soon as you have to go instead of putting it off and doing 50 million other things first, right? Like that's an act of self-care when you choose to go to the bathroom the instant you feel like you have to go to the bathroom. Or maybe another day it's taking a yoga class or making a point to meet a friend for coffee or do something that just feels nourishing to your soul. But to what you're saying, and that's why coaching is such an important thing and such an important tool right now, is because we don't always have the wherewithal or the support to be able to make those decisions on ourselves, because it's effing hard.
Totally.
Effing hard, yes.
So how do you, when you're doing with the people that you coach, and obviously self-care is at the core. So what does that all include? Like, what are we talking about? Like when you generally think of coach, you think, or a health coach, you think of like nutrition and exercise. And so how does that all have a role in what you're doing?
Yeah. So I really love to look at the primary and secondary foods. So in the primary food categories, there are 13 of them, and we're looking at things like career and relationships, spirituality, movement, home environment, home cooking, inclusion, joy, health, all of those things. And then the secondary foods are foods that we actually choose to ingest and digest. And while I find that clients come to me because they feel like they're not feeling well, or they want to lose weight, or they're just like feeling super off, I find that we spend a lot of time working in the primary food categories, because if we just focus on one side or the other, right? If we just focus on what we're eating and how much we're moving, but we're not looking at the potential shit show of imbalance that is going on in our primary food categories, it's going to be really hard to make sustainable change in our secondary food categories. Because if we're in a career, for example, that is the complete opposite of what we believe in, what we want to be doing, it's sucking our fucking soul out of our life every day, the last thing that we're probably going to do when we get home is be like, you know what? I really know that this wonderful like tahini, quinoa, fresh veggie bowl, just like, gosh, my body just loves when I eat that. So I'm going to like spend time cooking it.
Yeah.
We're probably going to come home because we've already worked 20 hours that day. We're exhausted. We didn't eat the entire day because we didn't feel like we could take any break away from the work that we had to get done. And we're probably just going to jam some tortilla chips in our mouth and call it a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by looking at imbalances on both sides, we're able to create a synergy that finding foods that nourish our body. And Amanda, I like so much love your approach on this, and we're so on the same page. Finding foods that nourish our body and make our body feel just like it wants to sing, and focusing on eating more of those, not saying that we can't have foods that don't make our body feel as well.
Yeah.
There's room for all of it, because oftentimes when we are eating foods that make our body maybe not feel as well, we're usually doing some pretty heavy-duty primary food nourishing stuff over here.
Yeah.
But anyways, when we focus on...
But to be fair, sometimes Cheese Whiz just tastes good.
I mean, I'm more of like the canned nacho cheese.
Oh, you know, I just brought up that the other day, like the spray cheese, like in the can. I know. See?
It's so good. But this is important point to make. We are both working in the health and wellness. We both eat canned cheese, y'all.
Yes.
And you want to know what? We're cool with it. We feel good about it because we enjoy it.
Yeah.
There's room for it all.
Yeah.
But when we find a place and we're finding these imbalances in both categories, we can help to create a synergy that helps to support both categories. Because when we are really taking time to nourish our body, take care of stress, like self-care, all of that kind of good stuff, and find a way that works for us to do it consistently, we have a better wherewithal mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, to take a really good look at the imbalances happening in our primary foods, like in our career, and begin to advocate to make change there. So it can be a really beautiful cycle of like, holy shit, I had no idea life could be this good. Or it can be a really vicious cycle, which a lot of us find ourselves in.
Yeah.
Like regularly, of like, life feels hard. Life feels hard. This is hard. I'm not eating the right things. Like we get on, and then we go on like our health wagons, then we fall off the health wagon, then we're in the cycle of guilt. Like, I'm just like, let's not build a wagon in the first place. Like, let's just be curious and figure out what works for us as individuals.
Definitely. Well, and I love the idea of taking primary food categories and labeling the word food onto things like career and spirituality and family and things like that, because that isn't in the normal conversation, and that's not generally what I think when I think of food. But I think that is so true, because it is what is fueling our day to day, on top of just actual you think of food, a piece of broccoli or whatever fueling your body. And it is so true, because when you are in those, we were discussing before we started recording, a part of my process and part of my journey is unpacking some ugly stuff about your life and really taking a look at that and unwinding that. And then the food, the movement and stuff kind of comes along with those sorts of things. But I think fixing or taking a deep dive into those primary food categories that you brought up is so incredibly hard and painful that it's easier just to use the actual food as a numbing agent or a distraction. And I'm so good with that, of like, I'm an emotional eater. Things are hard, or I'm super tired. Like you're just saying, take the tortilla chips. Like, I've had the longest day ever. I just want pizza. Like, it just feels comforting. It feels nice. And it usually does in that moment. And then I think afterwards, if you take that kind of clue to like cue into yourself and be like, how am I feeling physically and mentally from making those choices? That's also hard, because it's easy. You ate the pizza to numb out. You didn't want to have to think about how you felt about eating the damn pizza. You want to eat the pizza and zone out and watch some TV and go to bed. But it's like, but then you're just going to stay in that cycle until you're like, okay, well, why did I make these food or movement choices or lack of choices? Because of all the other things in my life and how they're all so tied together, which I think is incredibly important to have a coach through, because we're all just trying to make it through the day.
Yes.
No matter whether you're a billionaire or not, we all just got here. We're all trying to figure it out. We're just trying to survive. And when you're on, especially if you have, which it feels like we all are, we're all in this high octane level of living, of expectations from everything and everyone around us, that it is just like, just whatever I have to do to get through it. And then you just feel like trash until you stop and you're like, okay, we gotta clear some of this up. We need to clean this up a little bit, because otherwise I'm just going to live in this trash fire nightmare until I die.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And it's the power of something as simple as just getting curious. Like, we are so quick to judge ourselves, and that judgment is actually, I don't believe that it comes from us internally. Like, the judgment comes from the need for us to categorize things and like, is it good or is it bad, or is it like, because that's just how we like are conditioned to make sense of the world. But when we give ourselves to just be curious about our decisions without judgment, it is a really powerful thing. And you want to know what? Health does not happen in 30 days or 60 days. Wellness does not happen in 30 or 60 days. Like, it happens over an entire lifetime. So when we also kind of like give ourselves the freedom, I mean, we don't have an unlimited amount of time on this earth, right? But we also don't have to do everything in 30 days right away either.
Yeah.
When we give ourselves time to breathe, to like create this space and to really like take the radical fucking act of slowing the fuck down. Yeah. All the fucks right there. Like, seriously, that is a radical act in this world, in our society especially. But when we take time to breathe that space into our life and just get curious about what's working for us, what isn't working for us. I had this, and you know what? Every time I have this, it makes me feel like shit. Why is it making me feel like shit?
Yeah.
Maybe this is something worth looking into, or maybe not. And maybe you continue to eat that thing that makes you feel like shit. It's all okay. But working on just being more curious than judgmental that was a huge game changer for me in my life. And just kind of also knowing that you can pave your own path, what works for, we're all different. And we're all interacting, we're living things, interacting with other living things all the time. So things change. What was true for us one day may not be true the next day. And to also give ourselves permission and know that we are worth taking time to learn about. Like, we were given these, I know I threw this statistic out there, but the number is believed to be like there's a 1 in 400 billion chance that we're born human onto this earth. And we are given this like amazing machine. Like, our bodies are brilliantly, boldly made. Like, I mean, it is, as a personal trainer, I'm sure we could like nerd out on anatomy for hours, but we're never really taught how to use it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I believe is so important in slowing down. It's like, well, how do I actually use my body? And I'm not just talking about like, well, how do I lift this safely, or how do I move into this safely? It's like, well, how do I nourish myself? Like, what are my little, like, my microbiome doing? Like, how are they feeling about this? Like, I'm really stressed out. Like, what is the cascade of effects that's happening in this body? And what can I do differently to just help support myself more? Because you're the only person that you are with your entire life.
Yeah.
Yet we are the only person that we tend to put as a last priority throughout our entire life.
Exactly. Well, I think not only knowing how to use your body, but how to feel your body.
Yes.
And that is something that I struggle with, because then, using food to numb out, that's a big one for me. Or over-exercising. I've gone on the other end of that, of like, well, this is a healthy thing. So then I over-exercise as a way to not feel my body, which seems crazy, right? You think exercising, using your body, but you're not. You're numbing out sometimes if you're just kind of overdoing it. And it's interesting, you and I were both talking about how you're reading The Body Keeps the Score, and that one's in queue for me. The one I'm reading now is called Lifting Heavy Things, and it's about trauma-informed weightlifting.
Ooh.
And feeling your body through that. And through some of the things I read through that has not only made sense to me as a personal trainer, but made so much sense to me as a human, that I've always struggled with exercise in my own body. Like, I would call it, like, I have a dead ass. Like, I can't feel my glutes. I can't activate my glutes. I can't really turn them on without like really, really, really trying and tapping my butt and over. And through some of the things I'm reading, it's the understanding of like, because I've learned to not want to feel my body. I numb out of it because of either traumatic experiences I've been through or whatever else. I mean, we've all experienced all different levels of trauma. Nobody escapes trauma. And so for me, it's helpful to me to be like, just don't feel this. And so having that of like, I don't even know how to feel my own body, which is crazy. Like, I can't feel my own ass. Like, I can't do that. But how do you work through that process of like, no, it's okay. It's okay to feel this. We're okay to live in our own body. We're okay to feel what our body is doing. And then once you get to that level of like, I can feel through this, at least, from a personal training perspective, I'm like, okay, well, now let's grow it and let's throw some weight on it. Now we can actually do this level of work on it. But the first level of work is just allowing yourself to feel it without trying to numb out of it or distract yourself from it or run away from it, which has been the majority of my life and the way that I just kind of operate. And yeah, it sucks and it's painful and it's hurtful because you're so used to numbing and distracting to actually sit and feel. But once you do and you kind of go through that like, painful part of it, then it's like, okay, well, see, we got through that. And then you can start like growing and building upon that. And I think that when you're doing things like that is whenever you just kind of naturally go for a more nutrient dense food, or you care more about your sleep hygiene, and you care more about like having how the level of stress you have at work, because you're like, this is bullshit. I don't want to deal with this anymore. This makes me feel like trash, because you've actually like are feeling how it feels instead of my job sucks, it's stressful and it hurts, but I'm going to numb out by hitting a drive-through, or I'm going to go over exercise, or I'm going to, play online poker or whatever your thing is to tap out of it, to feel it, to fix it.
Oh, there's so much gold there. It is it's so true. Like, I would say, I like to call them like productive distractions. Like, one that I have to stay really on top of is work. Yeah. Right. And client work, because I'm like, oh no, like I'm helping someone. This is productive. Like I'm making, income, and this is like how I pay bills and do things and support my family. I can easily work endlessly, but it's like it feels productive. And I notice this with clients too. Work is like a really productive distraction that we have, and it's like, or to what you were saying, exercising. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to exercise and this is good. It's healthy for my body. Or like, at the same time too, becoming so strict about what we're eating and limited in what we're eating that we're making ourselves miserable because our body needs all the things. I love too what you were saying. I realized I had a client ask me the other day why I include yoga in my coaching packages. And, it was such a great question that I hadn't really thought about. And she was like, well, because can't I just like exercise at home or like, can't we just take this out of the package? And as I was thinking about it, I was like, no, because the reason why yoga is part of the package is because it takes the way that I practice and teach yoga is that it's taking concentrated time with yourself and time to listen to your body and learn how to listen to your body and have that relationship with it. Because it's
probably why I don't like yoga.
Yes, guess who's coming to a yoga class? I don't. But it is uncomfortable though to take that time. But it is. I really loved what you said too. It's like once you kind of start dipping your toes in the water of ways to get in touch with your body, to get curious around it, to learn about it, like it does just kind of snowball on its own.
Yeah.
And my health journey is my 3-year health anniversary will be in December. And I know you've been on your health journey for a number of years too. And like looking at like the shit takes time, people.
Yeah.
Like it takes time. It takes patience. It takes trying out new things, seeing what works. And if it doesn't work, if it doesn't feel good to you and your body, then like, that's okay. It just means try something new.
And that's also where you need to have the mental space to be like, oh, well, see, you failed again.
Yes.
I knew you couldn't do it. You're a piece of shit. Like all of that. Like, no, that's just what happens. Like how many memes and stuff do you see of like Kobe Bryant, like missed 2,000 or 14,000 shots or something. But it's like, but he's still Kobe Bryant of like, yeah, you're going to screw up and things aren't going to work. And you're just going to have to keep on trying. And maybe the things that you did before worked before, but they don't work now, and you got to let that go. And I think we just become so mean to ourselves, and we're such bullies that we don't even let ourselves get past that stuff.
Yeah, it's something that I have found has been useful, but this is challenging. I mean, all of it is challenging. None of this, deeply coming into yourself, learning yourself, living a deeply vibrant, wellness-filled, healthy life in a way that feels authentic to you is not easy work, people. It just isn't. But it's really worth it, and you're worth it. But I love, like, celebrating. I'm a natural celebrator anyways. Like, I think when I first came here, I was like, do you realize what a big deal it is that you've had this many pots? Like, this is a big deal. Like, I always can find something to celebrate. And rewiring your brain, because our brains are like, they're so brilliant, but they're also so dumb, but they're flexible. We have to remember they're flexible. We can retrain our brain, and taking time to celebrate even the littlest little good thing that you did for yourself that day to nourish your body, mind, soul, primary food, secondary food, whatever it is, and really taking time to celebrate that will help to rewire your brain.
Yeah.
So even if it's something like, you've had, an entire day, busy day, and there's just been fast food after fast food. And when I say fast food, I'm not necessarily talking about like drive-thrus. I'm talking like we mowed down our food really fast. Like that's not really super great for our bodies. If you slow down before you go to bed and you have and you just feel like something, and you choose a raspberry or an apple over nothing.
Yeah.
Like celebrate that shit.
Yeah.
Celebrate. Be like, fuck yeah, man. I ate a fucking raspberry before I went to bed. Hell fucking yes. Like it's like finding little ways to celebrate yourself throughout the day. And it's not an easy habit to get into, but it's really kind of fun and exciting and simple, but that's a game changer.
Well, the thing is we're trying, you said it's not easy to get into, but it's so simple, but so hard at the same time. It's like, we feel like, at least this is my interpretation in my own life and my own experience, is it feels like so simple, but it feels like, well, it can't be that easy.
Right?
So you got to make it harder. So you got to totally like beat yourself in the ground to do something harder than that. Like, no, it is just that kind of easy. And just like even talking about like, with the secondary foods of the foods that you're choosing to eat or the things that you're choosing to drink or to ingest in your body or the movement that you're choosing. Again, it doesn't have to be like, oh, we're just eating nothing but carrots and broccoli now. We are only eating like chickens that had bedtime stories read to them. And like, so it's like, it doesn't have to be that. It can just be like, I chose to have one extra glass of water today or one glass of water today. I chose to just walk around the block once, or it's those simple, tiny little things of like, that is the answer. It's just the patience part gets in the way. And so it's like, it is the answer. It's just going to be the answer over the course of your life versus 30 days. Are you down 15 pounds?
Totally. Yeah, that is so true. Oh my gosh. I love that about the chickens. I've been finding myself celebrating and trying to just kind of rewire my brain, get into this new fun size habit. I've been celebrating every time that I say no to something. And it feels uncomfortable and wild, but I'm like, oh, I just said no to this because I'm, I love saying yes. And we were talking about that before. We will say yes, at the detriment of our own health. And how do we be aware of that and take time for ourselves and practice what we preach and all of that. So yeah, celebrating saying no has been my new thing. So
nice. That's a good one. I need to get better at that one. So what are I'm not to put you on the spot. What are the 13 primary food categories again? Did you say 13 of them?
Yes. There's 13. So I don't know if I can name them all. Let me give it my best go.
Okay.
So there's joy, there's health, there's career, spirituality, movement, inclusion, home cooking, home environment. Did I say relationships?
No, that's
relationships.
9. 9's pretty solid.
Cool. Stay tuned for the other 3 in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think that's whether it's all 13 or not. I just think I just love that idea. I think that's just not a way that I look at it. Which, of like thinking of when you think of food, of like that's what you're using to fuel your body and mind through this life, and those things are so freaking important. And how can I just love that idea of like, oh, so I'm gonna focus on meal prepping or whatever, or I'm gonna eat organic, or I'm gonna go vegan, or I'm gonna do whatever I am with my food, and you're gonna figure that out. But everything else is just like you're in this awful abusive relationship or an awesome abusive job, or you're questioning your own spirituality of like they're kind of like playing tug of war at yourself, and something's gonna give up somewhere unless you're doing the work.
Yeah, and it has been so fascinating. I know I touched on this a little bit earlier, but it has like blown my mind. And so with my clients, I like to work with them for a minimum of 6 months because I think it's important to go through a bunch of seasons together and just kind of, see what unfolds. And as I mentioned, people will come to me because they're like, I want to lose weight. I need to exercise more. My energy's down, et cetera, et cetera. But I have found that my clients get the food pieces pretty quickly. And I don't do meal plans.
Yeah.
That's not my jam personally, or meal prepping, because there are parts of me I used to like really wish it was, but I'm like, oh, that's just not my jam.
Yeah.
But when they start to just get curious around, well, what foods make my body feel really great? What foods make my body feel not as great? And just get curious around that. They seem to get that like really quickly. And then we spend all of this time over in the primary food stuff. And I'm like, well, this is fascinating to me because it just made me think of like, in general, because we're ingesting things in different ways, like all around us with the people that we invite into our life.
The social media that we follow.
I mean, it's like, when you really think about it, we are a very overstimulated society, right? And when we start to just take notice and be like, oh, wait, so this doesn't, this career doesn't feel good, or this friendship that I have doesn't feel good. Every time I talk to this person, man, they're just like bringing me down, or like I just feel like worn out by it. Getting curious around why you continue to engage in that is super powerful. And it just helps to support whatever else is going on in the secondary foods. I mean, it's to what you were saying earlier. It's like when we just start with one small thing, it just starts to cause you to get curious and question like all the other things that are going on in your life in like a powerful way, it can be overwhelming, because it can be overwhelming to think about, oh shit, life can actually feel this good. It really is this simple when we've spent a whole life having things just be very complicated for us.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things, and this is my own personal journey of like, you don't realize what you're missing until you just get a taste of it. Of like, always just lived in this mindset. I lived ingesting these kinds of foods and whatever. And I just knew that's how it made me feel until I started shifting some of these things. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know I could have so much energy or feel so good or have a different mindset. And it's like, I think that, once you experience that, then it's not that it's not impossible to slip back. Oh, I've definitely slipped back, and you go there because that's life. But it's like, but once you kind of like know that feeling can exist and some of the things that you can do to get there, then I think then you're like, I don't know, for me, it's like, well, yeah, I want some more of that. I want some of the less of just kind of feeling like sleepy and gross and unhappy and bitchy and complaining and having... I was telling you before we started recording how I've just had like just major temper tantrums and just a lot of like rage and anger and all stuff of like that stuff kind of just, not that it's completely gone away, but when I just kind of started doing all of these healthier things for me and taking care of me, those things simmered down. And I just thought that was ultimately who I was. I just thought that was me. I didn't realize that was a symptom of how I was living my life until I had started living a different life. And I'm like, oh, whoa. Yes. Okay. But I think it starts with the first step of like, again, like you said, like, let's get curious. Like, is this it? Is this what life exactly is? And if you're unhappy in some sort of way with whatever that is, then why not start taking the steps to fix that a little bit or, feel that out? Because once you get a feeling of what that feels like on the positive side, then again, back to the point of domino effect or snowball effect, everything else just kind of starts going with it.
Yeah. And you made me think about the capacity that we have as humans to power through things and to normalize situations that are not good for us at the end of the day, and that's a web in itself to untangle, right? Which is why it's so important. I'm such a huge believer in like having a team of like wellness people around you, right? Because not one person holds all the answers. Like you need to kind of surround yourself with a variety of different perspectives and people and professionals and things like that. But it is really powerful when we just stop powering through, when we breathe some space, when we slow down and just allow ourselves to be curious about what's going on, because we can very easily, I'm 40 and I can definitely say that at 38, it took me 38 years to really start to look at things differently and look at my life differently and become more comfortable in putting myself first. And I still struggle with that. It was just back in July where I was like, I need to slow the F down.
Yeah.
And, I love clients because they really help to encourage you, not like in a direct way, but in an indirect way, encourage you to like just kind of like get deeper in there, because I really aim that if I am going to support somebody in their journey and say things like, you need to slow down, or, let's explore this, or I sure as shit better be doing that myself. And it doesn't have to be perfect either. I'm definitely not a perfect health coach that's eating salads 24/7.
Yeah, same.
Yuck.
Right.
Nobody wants salads
No.
all the time, nor do people want chicken all the time.
Yeah.
Large variety of foods out there to explore. But I think that's part of what I think is really beautiful about what we both bring to the table is like the realness and sharing the yuck and sharing the journey. Because when we share that journey and it's like, yeah, I've been through that, or I'm going through this, and this is what I'm learning, whatever you learned, what's feeling like, just being able to have conversation and give people space to reflect and process through things is amazing. But we have to be willing to take that first bold step and make the time to invest in ourselves. And that can feel uncomfortable.
Well, speaking of investing in ourselves, are you accepting new clients?
Yes,
Oh, so-
I am.
So walk us through that process if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh yeah, this is it.
This sounds like my jam. We are best friends already. Yes. So I take a limited amount of clients simply because I have to practice self-care as well. And I know my tendency to want to do too much for others, that I could find myself in a place of depletion, and why a client may never recognize or know that, because, we all have the ability to power through. That is not a healthy thing to do. I'm very mindful about the amount of clients I take at a time, because I want to make sure that I'm able to practice self-care and show up my best, most wonderful self for all of their sessions. And the process is, first, I love to talk to people. So I know people aren't necessarily into like the whole like face-to-face thing, if that feels uncomfortable. But I love to do like a 60-minute complimentary get-to-know-you call. And whether it turns into you become a client, or whether it turns into me just being able to help you uncover a couple fun-sized tips or tricks to get you closer to your health aspirations, I'm cool with both. I think that's something that I really want everybody to hear, because I worry that people won't sign up to do a 60-minute call. And you can slide into my DMs at Lindsey Loves Wellness, or you can email me or go to my website to do all of these things. But I'm concerned that people don't want to interact with it because they're freaked out that it's going to be a creepy ass sales call.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not. I truly just love talking to people. And if you're feeling my vibe, let's talk about next steps. And if you're not feeling my vibe, I can promise you that you will leave the call feeling better than when you started the call. Like that I know for a fact. So
what's the website? What's the email address?
Yes, the website is lindseybonadonna.com. Fun last name. So it's LINDSEY Bonadonna, BONADONNA.com. And then my email address is lindsey@lindseybonadonna.com. And then Instagram, of course, is at Lindsey Loves Wellness. And yeah, all those are great ways to reach out. And you can set up an appointment directly on my website, or you can just reach out to me and we can find a time that works best for you. Another great way too, if you just kind of want to like dip your toes into what life could feel like with me in it, I do also offer both virtual and in-person yoga classes as well. So virtual, obviously you can attend from anywhere. They're on Wednesdays and Fridays. My most updated schedule is always on the website. And if you're in Cincinnati, I teach at a really beautiful, cozy studio in Wyoming, Ohio called Kindred Flow. And that's located above Half Day Cafe right on Wyoming and Springfield Pike.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, I feel like we could talk forever, and we kind of already have today.
Yes, I love it.
So you're definitely going to have to come back and we can cover a variety of topics. But thank you so much for coming in. I love chatting with you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. And just like, thank you for being you and all the you and good that you bring into the world. I love you. This is so great.
Thank you. Ditto.
AmandaValentineBites.com